Grieving over the loss of a loved one. Hello, if you've not met me before, my name is Alison of Your Soul Family. At Your Soul Family, we teach techniques so that people can feel in control of their life, so that they can be more effective at work and live more harmoniously at home. Well, thank you very much for listening in today. Just make sure I can hear you all right. Drop me a like or a comment and let me know where you're listening from. It's always great to know. So this week's question, are you grieving over the loss of a loved one? It was actually a question that was asked by one of the listeners that perhaps we could have a session on it. And I know that everybody at some point in their life will experience grieving for a lost one who has passed. And the first time it happens to you, it can be a shock and you don't quite know what to expect or what's going to happen. Unfortunately, in our culture today, particularly in the West, we don't talk about dying. So it's really hard to know how to deal with grieving. When someone you love dies, it can leave a big hole in your life. And, you can feel awful and you can feel that life is just not worth living. If the person had an illness for a while, you might have had the opportunity to say some of the important things that you should say to each other. Perhaps that you love each other, or that you've forgiven each other for maybe a misunderstanding or a wrong in the past. But sometimes death is very sudden, as it happened to me with my husband. It happened just overnight and we didn't have time for those important conversations. And I think that's why people say you should live every day of your life as if it is your last. And I would really encourage you never to go to sleep on a row. It's much better to sort it out and kiss goodnight before you go to sleep. Well, whether it was expected or not, this passing, we all go into a grieving. And I think the grieving is our way of saying goodbye to the person that we love. In this process, I found that you experienced many emotions. They can range from sadness to anger to fear to abject loneliness. And as you go through this process, you experience these emotions and then you have to learn to let them go. And it's only when you start to let those emotions go that you begin to move forward and through your grieving process and out the other end. It certainly isn't a process to rush, and everybody takes it at their own pace. Most of us do go through the grieving process and come out the other end, and we go on to live a happy life and a fulfilling life. But there are a few of us that grieve to the end of our lives. And I think what is happening there is you are experiencing the emotions, but you're failing to let them go. And I know it's actually quite hard to ask yourself the question, what shall I do with the rest of my life? And how do I start adjusting it? Have you ever experienced this? Have you been left asking yourself, what shall I do now? Drop me a comment, let me know your story. Or just a like if you just agree, yes, it's happened to you. It is quite tough, but you can get through it. You'll all be listening to this on a replay because this is a recording this week. But I will look at the post over the next week or so I will pick up any comments that you make and I'll respond. So, I'm not sure what comments you'll be putting, but let me just share with you what I found. I was widowed in my 40s, quite sudden and quite unexpected. And I suddenly found myself with 2 children to raise on my own and a demanding job. My husband and I had always worked very much as a team, and without him there, I was really struggling. I actually felt my life was over and I just really wasn't coping. I thought about it. I thought, well, perhaps the purpose of my life now is just to raise our children the best that I can. But I just was experiencing absolutely no joy. And I actually think for the first year I was in total shock. And when people used to say to me, gosh, you're a bit young to be a widow, how old are you? I actually gave them my wrong age. I don't know why, but that's how it was. That's where my mind was, in a total spin. I tried hard not to cry in public, and I tried hard not to cry with friends, because I thought if I did that, who would ever want to come and talk to me anymore? And when I walked up the high street of our little local town, people just didn't know what to say to me or how to react. And I'd find they'd cross the road and wave to me from the other side of the road, so they didn't have to have a conversation with me. And I really missed physical contact. All I wanted was for someone to give me a hug. So all my friends were largely in couples, and the night that my husband died, I fell out of the married club. So my social life really just sort of degenerated and disappeared. My whole life really revolved around the children. And I don't know, it just wasn't much fun really. Not that I didn't love my children and I wanted to be a good mother, but I felt there had to be something more to life, but I didn't know what to do about it. And I didn't know how to change it. I was working, I was getting up at 6 a.m. and then working till 11 at night to do all that I needed to do for the children, to keep the home running and to maintain my job. I knew it wasn't sustainable, but I just did not know what to do about it. And I kept asking myself, what shall I do now for the rest of my life? And actually, the techniques that I now teach in Your Soul Family came out of this period, the total depth of grief. And they are techniques that help to lift me up and help me to get control of my life again. Have any of you experienced this sort of thing? You know, were you widowed, lost a parent, lost a really good friend? And were you in a total tailspin, not knowing what to do? Let me know your stories. I think it's healthy and helpful to share. Thank you. I think for me, I had a very pivotal point in my recovery from being a widow. When I realised I had no social life because I'd fallen out of the married club, I thought, oh well, I shall set up a widow and widowers club. So I invited round to my house 8 people for a dinner party. And in those 8 people, they were either a widow or a widower, or if they were in a couple, one of the couple had to have experienced being a widow or a widower. I must admit I was really nervous about this dinner party. It's not easy giving a dinner party for 8 on your own. And I felt I had to be in the living room serving drinks, but I really needed to be in the kitchen checking on the dinner cooking. And I was really quite anxious about it all. In the end, I asked one of the people who's my friend if he could serve the drinks for me. And of course he was happy to do it. Perhaps he was a bit nervous too, and it gave him a role in the evening. Anyway, eventually we sat down. Dinner was ready and we sat down to dinner. I must admit I was a bit nervous, but I found the conversation flowed and everybody seemed to be having a good time and they were laughing. At the home therapy, and I found that laughter at last had returned to my home. From that evening, I got other invites out, and my social life kicked in again, and I started to feel a bit more balanced then. I worked, I looked after the children, spent time and enjoyed the children, but I also had some adult company and an adult social life. So life was definitely getting a bit better. 6 months on from then I met the man who is now my husband. So I'd definitely taken a step forward. Anybody else had similar experiences? Being a widow or a widower or a partner or whatever, somebody who was a big part of your life. How did you step forward in terms of filling that gap a little and creating more balance in your life? Let me know. Drop a comment, or if it's too hard to talk about, just drop a like. Thank you. What I'd also like to share with you is that actually when somebody passes, you don't actually stop loving them. I still loved my husband. He wasn't here with me in the physical world, and I grieved for that desperately, but I still loved him. I now lead a happy and fulfilling life, and I still love him. I don't forget him. And I'm married to another man, and I love that man too. I actually think that love is expansive, and you can actually love two men. I love my late husband and I love my current husband, and I think that's okay. Have you found yourself in that situation, or somebody's proposed, or you're starting to get close to them and you think, is this right to do? Well, I think life is for living, and I think my husband that had passed wouldn't have wanted me unhappy. So I think it is okay. Now I think I've actually missed one point, and it's a very important point. Through the grieving, constantly, every night I woke up at 2 a.m. in the morning. No matter how tired or not tired I was, I always woke up at 2, and I just couldn't get back to sleep. And I really needed my sleep because my life was so busy as a single parent. And I really didn't know what to do about this. In desperation, I stumbled on finding that I could actually go within myself. And what I found there was not more pain and chaos, but I actually found a calmness and a strength that I didn't know that I possessed. And in that calmness, I think I met my inner you. Some people call it your higher self, your subconscious, your soul, whatever you like to call it. It's somebody deep inside you that loves you and will help to look after you and will always be wise and give you good advice. My inner view started to give me suggestions, little small suggestions, how I could change my life, make it more 6 and going to bed at 11 and not sleeping and waking up at 2. That just was not sustainable. So over time I made lots of little changes that helped me to manage that. But the biggest one was the wake up at 2 o'clock. Although it still continued to happen, I felt far less tense about it and anxious about it and thinking, oh, I'm not getting my sleep, what am I going to do? I stopped that thinking, that negative thinking. And somehow in that calmness, it seemed to relax my brain, and that enabled my body to relax. So even though I wasn't asleep, I felt my body was getting rest because I was just lying there calmly, just drifting, not thinking about anything in particular, just drifting, almost in a meditative state. And I found that was really, really helpful. So I don't know if you guys, anybody has the same experience. Let us know, because I do think it's worth sharing all of these things. We just don't talk about the process of grieving and how people get over it. And therefore we get stuck and don't know what to do about it. So that's one thing that I found really helpful. And it's a lot of those techniques that have gone into the things that we teach at Your Soul Family. So as I said, I have remarried. I'm happy, fulfilled, but I haven't forgotten or stopped loving my late husband. And if you said, have I got over being a widow? Perhaps I'd be tempted to say yes. But if I'm absolutely honest, I'm probably still in the tail ends of recovery. And I think this became apparent at a workshop that I went to recently. I went to a workshop about spirit art given by my friend Irene Glue. So she's an artist and a medium, and she does these wonderful exercises with you with coloured chalks or just charcoal, where you draw pictures, and through the pictures come the faces of past loved ones, and they bring you messages to help guide your life. So a bit like where I went within at 2 a.m. in the morning and got some messages to help me, these pictures help you to get messages about your life. We did a whole series of exercises, and towards the end she asked us to draw a picture with the coloured chalks that represented the energy over our current physical life, starting on the outside when you were a child into the centre as you are now. Well, I got a surprise. This is my picture, this way around. Hope you can see it. So you can see it's got green on the outside. I had an exceptionally happy childhood, which set me up for the rest of my life. And this is me now. It's all pinks and mauves. It's all about unconditional love, lots of love in my life. And I just love doing the job that I do now as a life coach and a medium. And I was really surprised how dark I drew this period, which was my grieving period, my widowhood. And when I had to describe this picture to the little group that we were in, I just became so emotional. I really hadn't let go fully of the emotion, and I did cry, and my friend had to give me a hug. So clearly I still feel that emotion a bit, so I haven't fully let it go, although I do feel I am on the tail end of the recovery process, and we're approaching 20 years, I have to say. So I don't know about you, but sometimes I find I think I'm doing really well, and then something happens and it catches me out. And I think that's where we're sort of getting better. So 2 steps forwards and occasionally 1 step back. But that's just how it is. We're human, and that's what our emotions are like. And we shouldn't get cross with ourselves. We should go with the flow. And so I think even my decision to talk about this today is another step on my recovery. Occasionally I could feel the emotional tickling in my throat, but I'm just managing to let go of it. I do think in our culture we don't talk enough about death and the passing of someone we love and the recovery after that they have passed. I hope you found my account, my very personal account of me experiencing widowhood has been useful to you. I do think I learned a lot from it. In my life it has been a very key life experience, and I think in some ways it transformed my life. When my husband died, I was very much the corporate slave. I worked long hours, dedicated. And I was often tired at the weekends and in the evenings, and maybe I wasn't fully present for my family. And now I've had the courage to change that, because I now realise how important, how valuable life is. I thought my husband would be there for ages, so maybe I sort of took our life together for granted, and it wasn't. It ended much sooner than I expected. So I'd say make every day valuable to you and get the most out of it. If you're not enjoying some aspect in your life, have the courage to change it. Live true to your feelings, because the emotions you experience in grieving are very heightened, but actually we experience emotions all the time, and we should listen to them and be true to them. So if you're not happy in something in your life, do have the courage to work towards changing it. Well, that's my thoughts on the grieving process. I hope it's been useful to you. Please, if you can, drop some comments. It would be really good to share on this particular session of the Life and Living blog, because I think there's lots of people out there who would gain a lot of value from hearing what you have to say. Say things with kindness, because words, we want them to be healing words, because that's where we all want to be whole. So thank you very much all for listening. That's Alison Wem from yoursoulfamily.com. If you want to listen to any other broadcasts about the challenges of life and what you can do about them, do have a look at my Life and Living blog on yoursoulfamily.com. You'll also find there the soul map templates, which are some of the techniques we use for being in control of your life. And there's a brief outline on steps on how to create them. Thank you very much. Speak to you again this time next week, Wednesday, 1 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. Thank you very much. Mm-hmm.